Okay, let's get into it. So today's video is all about how to sound good as a drummer. And when I mean sounding good as a drummer, I don't mean gear or different patterns and fills and techniques. I'm talking solely about your physical touch on the instrument. So something people forget about is the drums is an acoustic instrument. So the scope and dynamic levels is on the drum kit probably wider than any other instrument, you know. People say the drum kit's loud, but I mean, is this loud? You know, so we can be here, but also here, you know, on the drums. Which makes it a very exciting instrument to play, but also a challenging one because we've got all these different elements of the kit and they all have their own distinct character and natural kind of volume levels. So if I hit a floor tom at a medium volume, whereas if I hit a cymbal at a medium volume, volume is going to be completely different. You know, we got the low sound of the floor tom and we got the high piercing sound of a cymbal. So that's going to bring up issues when we go to creating grooves because we're going to have to figure out how we're going to balance the elements. So today's video is going to be all about dynamic independence, and this is a area drumming I really feel people don't give enough credit to. So in the early recordings there would have been very few mics on the drum kits, but the drummers always sounded great, and that's because they had great dynamic independence. So when they played grooves, it sounded good in the room. So nowadays when everything's mic'd and you know, there's so much post-production going into recordings and even live, drummers, I think, get a little lazy, and you know, you can really rely on the sound engineer to beef up your snare or to bring down your cymbals and stuff like that. But regardless, your dynamic control is going to dictate how you sound as a drummer. So today I've set up 3 mics only. We've got a snare mic, SM57 on the snare, and we've got one overhead, a mono overhead, and we've also got one room mic. And these are for a few different things. I'm going to use the overhead mic to demonstrate how, if you don't control yourself correctly on the instrument, the overhead mic is only going to pick up cymbals. This might be okay if you got a lot of close mics, but if, say, you're only running a mono overhead and a kick mic, for example, you're going to sound terrible as a drummer, you know. And then the room mic, with the room mic, I'm going to demonstrate how maybe an audience perspective of you is going to sound. So if someone was in the room with you and you're playing, this is going to be somewhat what you'll sound like. So you want to get it sounding good at the source. The base principle I'm going to talk about is kick and snare above cymbals. So regardless of what dynamic level you're playing at, I believe, for the most part, cymbals should be played lighter than kick and snare. I'm going to start off with a medium dynamic. So I want to show you a common mistake I feel drummers make in terms of their dynamic approach to the kit. So here we go. Okay, so you may be saying to yourself, what if I'm playing super quiet? So that's where things become really difficult. Because if we're playing quietly on the kick and snare, we're going to have to play extra quietly on the cymbals. So I'm going to demonstrate everything played quietly. So here we go. So now, you're going to ask yourself, what about all those cymbal bashers and guys that just play obnoxiously loud? What about those guys? Well, if you watch drummers like Dave Grohl and Travis Barker, yeah, they're hitting the cymbals really hard. But what are they doing with the kick and snare? They're playing the kick and snare even harder. So I'm going to demonstrate a really loud rock groove, crashing on cymbals and everything. I'm going to demonstrate everything played loud, like super loud. Here we go. So, hopefully some of the things I've talked about in this video opened up your eyes to maybe how important it is to be intentional with the dynamic levels you play on each part of the kit. Now, everything I've talked about in this video is just a general rule of thumb, and it depends on what kind of music you're making. But I think if you work on your dynamic independence, you will really see just how much better you sound as a drummer. So, even playing a basic groove, you know, an amateur might play a basic groove like this. So, work on your dynamic independence, being able to play the cymbal soft and the snare hard, you know, vice versa. Bass drum really hard with the cymbal really soft, you know, all these different combinations, and that's what's going to give you dynamic independence and make you a much more controlled drummer. And it's actually a really freeing part of the instrument, because the hard part of this instrument is control. So if you gain control over the separate instruments, you can really dictate your own sound, you know? So take these concepts and apply it to what you want to sound like as a drummer. Maybe as a drummer, you want to have a heavy cymbal sound, you know? Maybe you want to play with a jazz style where your cymbal is the lead, you know, and you want to bring the kick and snare back, you know? Maybe you want to be able to play at ridiculously soft volume level and then take the cymbals even lower than that, you know? It just gives you the opportunity to really shape your own sound. And, you know, it's something I've worked on a lot because I've played in many situations where I had to bring the volume down really quietly. And earlier on in my drum was all about conviction. And the only way I could get that conviction was by playing the drums extremely loudly. But by practicing these techniques, you'll be able to play with conviction at low dynamic levels and be able to dictate the sound regardless of the venue. You won't need, okay, I need the sound man to really help me out here to get this snare to cut through the mix. Or vice versa, I'm playing something really gentle and, you know, I'm going to have to rely on the PA to push everyone above me, you know? It will give you the ability to even just play with an acoustic guitar player, you know, and have the dynamic level right with the instrument. You're responsible for your own sound as a drummer, and trust me, working on these things will make your drumming a lot more enjoyable. So, hope you guys got something out of this video, and feel free to subscribe to my channel for more content. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoy. What is it? No, I'm only...